asked him, you know, where he worked, why he had the money, and I keep getting that standard response.
So you were for Ron Paul, and these are contributions?
Yes, sir. The money says it's from campaign for liberty.
Okay. That's all you had to tell us.
I was only asking if I'm required to answer the question.
Okay.
But see, we're going through, I mean, that's all, as I told you before, we could avoid all this. Just answer the question.
Could you just give me a yes and I would have answered the question?
2 questions. I mean, this is rocket science.
So these are campaign contributions to Ron Paul.
Yes, sir.
You're free to go.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we listened to an edited version. We didn't take any voices out. We just took dead sound out. But you heard Steve Bierfeldt basically had a little iPhone in his pocket. He tapped his pocket like that, and it began to record.
Look, the whole thing is a disgrace. I mean, it's not the point that, yes, it would have been very simple for him to answer that question. The problem was they had no right to ask those questions, and he was being a good American by refusing to answer. Hopefully these people will lose their jobs, and we can educate the policemen or the people who work at the airports. They're not there. You know, you're allowed to carry money, and you don't have to tell the government how you got it, why you got it, where you got it. These security guys at the airport are there to protect us from explosives, from bombs. They're trying to prevent
things that would prevent the plane from going from A to B.
From traveling safely. They're not there to interrogate you. What if they're going to start asking us, "Oh, that's a nice watch. Where'd you get that watch?" I mean, it doesn't matter where he got it. The government can't ask those questions.
Mike German from the ACLU joins us now from our studios in D.C. Mike, welcome to Freedom Watch.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming here. What do you know about any other instances in which people have been stopped and interrogated and asked questions about their travels, their behavior, their wealth, their cash, that have no conceivable relationship to the TSA's stated responsibility of keeping contraband or unsafe devices off the plane?
Well, I know of a number of instances. I mean, one I read about just today, a gentleman was stopped because he, on the little plastic baggie where you have to put your toiletries, he had written Kip Hawley is an idiot, and was actually detained for that. So, you know, this sort of abuse of authority is not new. And, you know, I just commend Steve for being so brave as to record it and to stand up to and assert his rights so that we actually have evidence of what happens.
Is it likely, and of course I love these combinations, Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich agree on the same piece of legislation, the Campaign for Liberty and the ACLU is on the same side of the individual against the state. Is it likely that legal action will ensue, and is it reasonable to expect that some federal judge somewhere, either in Alexandria, Virginia, to which Steve was flying, or in St. Louis, Missouri, where this happened, will say enough is enough?
Well, I hope so, and you know, our litigators in New York are certainly looking at that and looking at the issue to see if there's some way that we can help.
All right. Mike German, thanks very much. Please keep us up to date. Please reach out to us as you learn more and more about any litigation that may follow from this.
Sure will. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. I think Lew Rockwell from the Mises Institute joins us now. Is he with us?
Judge, great to be with you.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Lew. Peter Schiff is here as well.
Hi, Peter.
30 seconds about what I did last night. I read TARP documents. I read the contracts between the Department of the Treasury and 5 of the 15 largest banks. One of the banks is run by the banker to whom I spoke a few weeks ago. You all know about this conversation in which he told us about the FDIC saying, sell us stock or we'll audit you for 5 years. The other 4 I picked at random. Here's what the contracts say. The government can keep that stock for as long as it wants. There's no standards for the government returning it. So Tim Geithner can exercise in his own subjective brain what TARP money he'll return and what TARP money he'll keep. But if the government wants to sell the bank stocks that it now owns to a third party, it must first offer it back to the bank. So we have a government that can force its way into private industry, own a chunk of it, can't or won't sell it back, and doesn't even want us to look at the documents evidencing all this.
Now they're including the insurance companies now as of today.
Well, right. I mean, the TARP has now gone from toxic assets to automobile manufacturers to insurance companies. Are you surprised that the government's nose is under the tent like this, Lew?
Well, I'm not, Judge, because I think we live in what we have to consider a fascist economy. We have a government-business partnership, and of course business, as with TARP, sometimes it doesn't have any choice about being part of the partnership. but we have the government and also labor unions. It's the classic fascist economy. We do not live in a free economy anymore. This is not a free market. There are free market aspects to it, thank goodness. Otherwise, we'd all be starving to death. But more and more, the government under Obama, and it's true under the Republicans, of course, too, is taking control. And it's what Mises talked about, why the middle of the road leads to socialism, he said in a famous essay. Because every time the government makes an intervention, it brings on more trouble, which then, of course, the government uses as an excuse to have more intervention, and eventually we end up with a total socialist state.
Michelle Muccio, thank you, Lou. Michelle Muccio joins us from Washington. Michelle, welcome to Freedom Watch. I apologize for the time delay. We had some technical difficulties.
No problem, Judge. I realize Italians are typically late, so.
Italians are typically late. Lou, don't take that one down. Michelle, here's what we've learned, which is basically that the government can decide which TARP funds it will keep and which TARP funds it will return. How dangerous is it, A, for the government to force banks to sell some of their stock to them against their will, and B, for the government to be able to decide without any standards whose money it'll give back and whose money it'll keep?
It is so dangerous. The problem here is not about bonuses. I mean, we have so much focus on AIG. It's about this corporatism that the Obama administration is perpetuating. It's about big business and government being together. Basically, I think that the government should have nothing to do with big business. It's the big business's fault, though, for taking the money in the first place. So I would encourage big business and other businesses who have received this TARP money to try to figure out a way to give it back. Because right now, the government is going to meddle in their businesses until they do so.
Michelle Muccio, thanks very much for joining us. I promise we'll start at the top of the hour the next time you're here. Lew Rockwell, thanks as well. Peter, before we go, here's what the banks fear. The government owns 2% of these banks. How could they possibly control management? Because the Congress will write some law retroactively and say, if the government owns any of you, it can control management.
Sure, and the problem is, giving the money back. A lot of the banks, they can't give it back because they'd be bankrupt without that TARP money. That's part of the problem. We should let a lot of these companies go bankrupt. And I'm sure even the ones that potentially could afford to give it back, if the government wasn't buying up all these toxic assets through the Federal Reserve and artificially making a market, they'd be bankrupt too.
For Lew Rockwell, Peter Schiff, Michelle Muccio, Steve Bierfeldt, Mike German, Mike Ferguson, and Judge Napolitano, thank you for watching Freedom Watch. Remember to stay free.